Welcome to the Improvisors podcast, a podcast where myself, Neil Thomas, and co-host Kevin James talk to improvisers about their improvisational practices. Who are we talking with today, Kevin?
Today's the second part of an interview with Emily BOWMAN and JOEY LEHRER, a performance duo, Two for Now. We finished the last podcast with a question that Emily answered about the difference that they have come to understand between working in a studio, their practice there, and performing in front of an audience. We start this podcast with Joey's response to that question.
Do you have to put explicit now?
Joey.
Yeah, I think if I was talking about the connection between the sort of practice behind closed doors, the studio time that we have alone versus the performance, I think there's a couple of things that I would sort of say. One is, I think the time in the studio alone, it just is our kind of bedrock. It's sort of
baseline.
Yeah, it just really helps us know where we're at. It helps us just kind of be together, do our thing. It is the sort of thing that feeds the rest. Then I think definitely in the last couple of years, as we've had a bit more interest to push performance, there's absolutely a recognition that you can't practice performance improvisation without practicing performance improvisation. You need an audience. Like you can spend as much time in the studio as you want by yourself, kind of prepping and preparing and whatever, but you actually need to practice it in front of an audience in order to, and also, as we've done many times, inviting in a handful or one or two people to watch is useful, but it's also not an audience. Like there's a certain kind of energy of an audience, and so we absolutely recognize that, and so we recognize that in growing our understandings of our performance practice, we also need to just be doing that in front of audiences
regularly
to continue to grow that understanding of what happens for us in performance. Especially as we are interested in, having slightly longer timeframes rather than just the 10-minute on a kind of multi-bill or like what is it to do a half an hour, or what is it, to do 45 minutes or something like that. So there is that recognition. And then Emily mentioned the sort of composition. And I think especially in the context of extended practice, performance practice, those are really the questions that are sitting with us at the moment. Is like, what does it mean to craft a piece, even though you're improvising? What is crafting look like? What does it look like for us? How do we each do it? Because we both have really different approaches to that. Emily, I mean, she said she has a bit of more compositional, and I'd say from a contemporary background, like she's got a more contemporary compositional. I did some time with Al Wonder, and so I think I have a bit of sort of Al Wonder kind of methodologies and in my sort of background for like crafting and composition and modes of performance, and so how do we both see it? How do we both see crafting in a longer piece? How do we negotiate? And I think in some respects that's been some of the trickiest territory for us to kind of work our way through. Like the contact has always been solid, we can always read it, it's very kind of readable, but this next piece and layer of like, how do you approach crafting when we're out there, and how do I approach crafting when we're out there, and how do we meet with that as it yes.
We really did dig into that the year before last year. And got down a bunch of, tried to identify a bunch of ways that we're working and a bunch of tools. like noticing what we're doing, if it's really image based, or if it's quite pedestrian, or it's quite solo, or also borrowing on some of Al's language here, or the repetition, or the recycling movement, or it kind of thinking of along the lines of tuning scores. And we kind of developed a series of methodologies that I think
languages for us.
That work for us. And so it starts to feel like ours, and that's kind of, and also when we teach through those lenses, or through those frames, when we come to teaching composition and performance in a contact.
For the past many years, we've taught a sort of week-long workshop, and where in the early days it was just very much a contact improvisation workshop. Our compositional interests mean that over time it's very much become, it's still very much contact improvisation workshop, but we really enjoy to bring in
instant composition,
compositional elements to, because again, contact improvisation has both contact and it has improvisation. And for us the fullness of that is not that people can just improvise without the contact, but they understand how to work with their weight, how to work with the weight of another body, how those things fit. But then they also are open to play, open to kind of play in a broader spectrum, and sort of without losing the sensibilities of all of that weight sensing, that they can bring that into a wider frame. It
would be wonderful, maybe even not this time, but to actually talk about those strategies, to talk about those
aspects,
discoveries you've made that continue to inform how you practice and how you, scaffold performance, and where your intentions lie around that. Maybe we could explore that further at another time. I'm sitting here wondering about improvisation and worldview, and what it is that keeps you alive with this practice, and how it entwines with being in the world in the bigger picture of life. And does it entwine, or how does this sort of world of practice and world of living more generally, how do they meet?
Great questions.
Yeah, great question.
For me, I feel like I can go in many directions here. For me, like, fundamentally, contact is about listening and this kind of reciprocity or relational practice. And I also, this idea that we're not only moving through the world, but we're also being moved, we're being affected as much as we are affecting. And so the other person, this kind of relational exchange. I think, it was very clear for me throughout COVID anyway, my practice shifted into a walking outdoor movement practice, where kind of call it ecosomatics, if you like. And, I would spend every day, moments of my day doing practice where I'd walk, and I'd think of it as a broad underscore. And I'd walk and I'd notice where my attention wanders. I'd do a stand at some point. I'd lie down, like the contact practice, the underscore, bonding with the earth, grazing, attending, following my curiosity, coming back with maybe like some found object that or some dance that has occurred. But this idea that contact is kind of, it encourages me to be curious and it encourages me to continue meeting my partner, the floor, the ground, gravity, the earth, thinking. Yeah, it encouraged me to kind of be curious and coming to the dance with questions, and also this somatic approach actually to life and to the world and to being in the world. And I think, you know, on many levels, when we slow down enough, many of us experienced it throughout the lockdowns. And I feel like this is where contact and kind of the way I want to be in the world, when we slow down enough and sort of really attend to sensation and the breath and to listening and move through the world with greater care and community. And, you know, it's a really rich life. And so that was really, like, that really translates for me. I feel like when I'm dancing outside, it's so much informed by my contact practice and the way in which I've come to movement and the way in which I understand the world through being in my body or being an embodied person, and through dancing with Joey and dancing contact improvisation, you know, sensing through the skin or listening, not just through the ears, but, you know, as we all understand here, like listening as this deeper way of sensing and with the whole body. And yeah, there's something about care that's coming up here in all of this, and yeah, how contact teaches me to be, or encourages me to be alive to the world and to the other human, non-human beings that I interact with.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Emily. That's and Joey.
Sorry.
No. That was perfect, because I will be a little bit cheeky and say that for me, contact, after that, contact helps me learn about the meaninglessness of life.
Meaninglessness.
I will get to that one in a moment, but I think contact and improvisation, to talk specifically about contact improvisation, one of the things that I love about it is there is a very realness to it. And like, if you've been at a contact workshop or event for a few days, people seem very real, like there's a corporeal reality to it, and part of that is because you are dancing in whilst negotiating the forces of another body. It allows you to have a very deep connection to the fact that you can be doing your thing and you can be interested in your thing, but at any moment another body might crash into you, and you're going to have to deal with that and cope with that and adjust to that. And so as opposed to many sort of solo dance pursuits, and where you can really kind of go on this curious investigation, but you might just kind of head out on some tangent off over there. I love that contact, kind of the very fact that the physics of another body might just come, you know, through accident or through whatever, might just come into your, and you'll have to deal with that. It keeps you very alive to the moment now. It stops you going off on some kind of place over there, because you have to be present to the now moment. So I guess, yeah, in the succinctest kind of form of where improvisation and my sort of worldview intersect is this sense of like bringing you into the now. And that's, life still gets in the way, and the dogs and the kids and all the rest, but I like that I have something in my life that helps remind me of being in this moment, in listening to this moment, kind of, and that that allows me to kind of, if I can be in this moment, listen to this moment, then I have options. I kind of have options for what life is. But then to just kind of round out this meaninglessness, one thing that I also really enjoy in these sort of extended time that I've been in contact is the realization that forces, often it's possible to, you dance in contact and that person's weight is maybe a bit stronger than yours, not in terms of physical weight, in terms of the way they work with their weight. They might be a bit more sort of full or push in their weight, and you might not. And if you experience, you adapt and adjust to that. But it's early in the day, it's easy to ascribe meaning to that, to kind of be like, oh, they're a really pushy person, or and someone's hand ends up on your knee and it feels like, oh, what's the meaning in someone's hand on my knee? But also over time, contact keeps you asking, just what is that weight? What is that? What is the physical thing of that? And that person pushing me, it doesn't have to have more meaning than that there is more weight coming at me. And so in that, there is a kernel of, it's whether, whatever I'm doing doesn't have to have more meaning than its existence. And so therefore, if there is a meaninglessness to it, there can also be a real kind of, the other side of existentialism is just a real kind of joy, a real kind of well, yeah, it doesn't have to have, it can, but
it's just also fun to play with the meaning.
There's the now and the meaninglessness. There's maybe where I'd go with that.
Wow. Oh, so rich and full. I'm kind of speechless listening to you unearthing all of that. It's just so lovely. I hope the recording is working on your end, Kevin, because I've got an unstable connection, and every now and then it drops in and out, and I'm not sure whether that's not making the whole thing better, because I'm kind of craning in and projecting this meaning. Such a profound and real experience, and it made me think of watching you, and one of the things, it being so evident that your 10 years of committed working together in a process that's been sort of unhindered in a way. It's been very organic and very real and very somatic, I guess. It's very of the body and kind of uncomplicated. And it made me think how that's, you were talking in the last couple of years, it's sort of flowering into the performance world. And how so often that's not the case for performance, how it's just naturally grown out of who you are, or commitment to each other and your trust of each other. And that is, it's a sort of an invisible, we smell it and we feel around it, but it's not evident in the, you're just organically doing what you're doing. I'm not sure why I'm going on this big rave, or
it's great.
I'm not sure there's a question.
I mean, it does make me think of just a brief response to that. This idea that we actually, like, zooming out for a moment and going, actually, we work quite slow, quite slowly together, and we really take our time. Often I think it's quite maybe unusual in the Australian contemporary dance or dance landscape to keep dancing with someone without any outcome, without any, not even like, it's just our research practice, what our interests are. And maybe from that, the writing project might emerge, or like we're really open to see what comes of it, as opposed to we've got this funding or we've got this project or this performance coming up, let's rehearse. It's this continuity of practice that where projects emerge from, which I think is really quite, maybe it's unique, but maybe not so unique, I don't know. But it does feel, you know, we have to take the time and continue taking the time together. And this other thing in our philosophy of practicing is this, it takes the time it takes, and this not doing, kind of not pushing, actually, not going for the funding, or, you know, just knowing when to push and knowing when to not. And that's also been quite a, you know, we've had different ideas about that over the years, but actually I feel like it's one of our strengths in the way which we approach work, because there's this question around sustainability and how to make a practice sustainable. And actually that's what I love about contact and dancing. It keeps me dancing and it keeps me curious, because I have a practice, and I have for so many years. You know, it's never been you know, it's in contact and improvisation, you do create practices, and this is, you know, easier to sustain that. And especially when you're rocking up to the studio with another person, and you're in, you know, physical touch, it's like you need that other person. So I guess there's just a comment there around, yeah, we work slowly, but we also, there's this beauty in taking the time and going on that walk, on that long walk.
It's,
You know,
deep. Maybe it's slow and deep. I was thinking how someone said to me it takes 8 years to grow a garden, with all of the things merging and pushing against each other and coming to some sort of assimilation. I had another sort of little question that jumped out, a curiosity, and a kind of lowbrow curiosity. But has it ever sort of occurred that you're grumpy with each other? And how does that, like in a performance, you're about to go on, and how does conflict resolve in the contact world?
Gets real sticky.
I think so there was a few things in that of, like, you know, like how do we resolve conflict, or have we been grumpy, and then also like how that plays out in performance. And I think, yeah, it's that I wouldn't say it never happens in performance, but I would say I think when it comes to performing, generally we know that in and of that moment we're both trying to show up, we're both trying to pull together, we're in this together. So I think
on the same team.
I think in that heightened space of performance, generally, like I can think of some where the performance has felt, and this is where I'll, I guess, use sort of Al's schema of kind of, you can be inspired, or you can be working, or you can be searching. And so those states sometimes feel quite different. You can get off from a performance and feel like, wow, that was real work, like, you know, and you can walk off from others and feel like, oh, that was just amazing, it was all flowing. And so
we can also completely disagree with one another.
Yeah, so there's but that's a bit different to conflict. And I think yeah, we recognize that if we're about to walk into performance, we need to be enough on the same page. And so the conflict, like in the practicing and the kind of preparation, we've had really sticky moments, and it usually grinds along for a little while, and then usually someone calls it out and be like, "Oh, okay, so let's deal with this," and then we have the big talk.
Yeah, usually involves a lengthy walk and talk.
Yeah.
Okay.
And get out of the studio to get things moving. But also it it comes back to trust as well, that thing of, trusting each other, I trust you, you trust me, and just having a reset moment, that's a really useful strategy for us, and of whether that's walk and a talk but the other thing I think, and I said it earlier, is that for me, what I often need in those moments is actually to move with Joey and to have a personal check-in of like, how are you going? How am I going? How was your day? If I don't have that and I just come straight to it, it's like something's missing for me. And, so there's some things that we know that we need to do to set up the conditions as best as we can. And sometimes if it's kind of all a bit rushed, then it's a bit of a recipe for.
Yeah. And I described this to someone else the other day, which is like, because we have this language of contact, that is always there is always a clarity of conversation within that. Like, and I described it to someone the other day, like, often most conflicts is because one or both people in the relationship are either in something from the past or in something from the future, because those are the things that generally feed into creating conflict. Actually, if both people are in the now, usually they're pretty sweet. And so because we have this contact language, that we can be having like really talky, and then we'll go, okay, let's just dance. And it's not that then resolves it, but we have this other mode of communication that will always sync up and be established, and because it's in the now, and we can be in the now, and then, like Emily said, it's trust, and it's just the recognition that I want to be in this, you want to be in this, like any kind of relationship or marriage, like, it's just a bit shit sometimes, but you just, like, I do want to be here, you do want to be here, let's just work it out.
Yeah.
It almost feels like we're heading back into that place of the parallels with being in the world in the bigger picture versus the world of sort of performance and practice, and how wonderful for us to keep bubbling around this. We're reaching a point where we're needing to finish soon, but I think it's sparked so many prospects, the chat. I'm really intrigued by, Joey, you speaking about meaninglessness, and Emily, you talking about meaningfulness, and this sort of interaction, not only between you, but for all of us. How do we find meaning in the world? And Joey, you mentioned something about not interpreting weight, just letting it be what it is in a way. So I guess there's these many things that could spark off further conversations, rich pickings. But I think we're reaching the end of our time this morning. And what a wonderful opportunity it's been to hear you sort of expound upon and draw out and attend to details and motivations and understandings around what you do. It's been an absolute delight to have the opportunity.
Truly inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you both so much. That was really enjoyable, and also really nice to hear your reflections and observations. It's enjoyable, but it's also really helpful, I think, to kickstart our residency at Orbost especially.
Yeah, thank you.